Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Michael Stone. Bethany and I, we run the Factory Society. We're an organization based in Alexandria. Our mission is to educate and inspire a community of emerging art collectors. So I'm going to hand it to Bethany to introduce Samira.
Sure. Thanks again. I'm Bethany Kusha with the Factory Society. Michael and I are so excited and privileged to welcome Samira Farmer, who's the business manager for the Mid-Atlantic region of Doyle Auctions, based here in the DC area. She handles business development, estate appraisals, and evaluations throughout our region, and has over 20 years of experience in the auction, appraisal, and antiques industry. She is savvy, smart, passionate, and I'm proud to call her a friend. Tonight, she's going to talk to us about the art market, how to discover what moves you, the myriad of ways to find affordable art online, and tips for how to participate in online auctions. Samira, would you like to say a few words before we get started?
Yeah, thank you so much, both of you, for inviting me to join you tonight. It's just really fun to talk about really my favorite subject. And collecting art in the virtual world, there's so much opportunity right now. I remember my first piece of art, and that was something I acquired about 20 years ago when I had my first job at an auction house in Miami. And it was a 19th century painting of a woman with her dog. And I still have it today, and it's still, it's a very personal thing for me. So it's not the most exciting thing in my collection, but I'm emotionally attached to it. And that is one of the things that we really have to consider is collecting art it's emotional. It's about building community. It's about talking to each other like we're doing tonight. There's no right and wrong. There's just an opportunity for conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I also remember one of the first things that I was not able to afford, I couldn't buy, and it was around that same time period that I had access, if I had money, to a Basquiat painting that came up on the market when I lived in Miami, worked at an auction. And so when you start collecting, I think it's important to really be present for everything that's around you and think about different opportunities, find emotional connections, find fun people to talk to, and just really enjoy every minute of it. It doesn't matter what your budget is. This slide, basically, everybody's kind of going, what the heck is going on here? This is supposed to represent the world's colliding online. For those of you who are not familiar with the person in the photograph, it is the rap star and icon Megan Thee Stallion. She is posing with a Dior handbag. The Dior handbag is inspired, or the design for it is taken from a painting, which is larger there in the slide, that was done by Judy Chicago in 1973. So you've got a handbag, a rap star, a feminist icon, an Instagram post. It's like, what? Oh my goodness. But it really shows us technology has come so far and has changed all the conversations that we're having. When I started in the auction business, I remember my first digital camera, and I'm not sure how many other people remember some of their first bits of computer equipment, or the first, the gaming system they had in the 80s, or my first digital camera was over $1,000. It was heavy as a brick. It ate batteries. And now we have phones, cameras, they're the same thing. And I can follow a rap star like she's my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
So pop culture and what's going on in the world is of interest to me, but you can just as easily follow interior designers, or you could follow art critics, or, there's a real opportunity now because of COVID, where there's so much content online. It's made it such a terrific place for both new and seasoned collectors. Within the last year, we just have access to virtual programming literally from all over the world, and you don't have to leave your home. We can see museum exhibitions, we can see artist studios, we can see what artists maybe in the Torpedo Factory are doing. So there's a lot going on right now, and it's very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some ways that you can kind of find those the art that excites you?
There's a number of different ways. And so if you advance the slide, um, there are different ways to be engaged with art. And you can buy online, you can buy through art fairs, you can buy through galleries. And so there is some information that I'll talk about in just a minute on the specific places where the art is, the specific websites. But you just have to look. You can find art wherever you want, to be honest. You can find what is interesting to you. For me, I just look around me. I'm more of a design historian. My master's is in the history of decorative arts and design. So I've always been really interested in the intersection of craft, pop culture, design, art, furniture making, history, all of these different things. So you can find it in anything from a piece of ceramic to, illustration art for a rock band.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
find it at anywhere you look.
On you mentioned Instagram. I follow an artist. Her name is Langley Fox. She happens to be the great granddaughter of Ernest Hemingway, and she's known for her hyper realist pencil illustrations. And I also follow her sister, and that's how I figured out that she just finished a limited edition, and she's selling drawings for $40. And I just thought that was, going back to what you said about like following them like they're your best friends. It's amazing that you can really reach out and DM someone on Instagram and buy a piece of art that way.
And you can buy what you love in different price points. And so here on this particular slide, the piece of ceramic is something that's in my own collection that I bought when I was in graduate school at the Cooper Hewitt Museum store. And that was probably around 2003. And I just, again, I'm really interested in kind of the cartoon pop culture. I was really listening to a lot of like Japanese punk rock at the time. And, there's a lot going on. And the artist has gotten really hot all of a sudden, and paintings go for $25 million. And so sometimes you have access to something and you have to think outside the box. It doesn't always have to be, I need to buy a painting by this artist. You can find tremendous things that make you think of something. You can follow people on Instagram that you think are great, and you can support living artists that way as well. And I think that's something that I always like to stress. One of the most important things that we can do as collectors is to support living artists in our communities, to have these conversations, to support galleries. Things like that are just they're really not just fun, but also crucial.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so do you think that I guess the transition now to things being online, do you think that's making the art more accessible now than it used to be?
I do. I think that there's a lot more access. I know for me personally, I find that I'm more comfortable clicking a button. I'm more comfortable. I went to an exhibition, for example, an in-person one, which is unusual, over Christmas in Florida. And the Sarasota Museum of Art had some paintings that just bowled me over. And I saw on the label that they were from a particular gallery that I was familiar with in New York. So I emailed and said, hey, I saw these and I'm sort of interested. I knew they were out of my price point, but I wanted to know how far out of my price point they were. And I don't know that I would have done that if we were in a different environment where we're so used to clicking and liking and pushing a button and asking for information, and things are online and I can hide behind my computer screen and nobody is judging me or, looking at how I'm dressed or trying to figure out if I'm for real. And, I think that is a real opportunity that no matter who you are, you can ask questions and probably get an answer.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of a price range, I guess I imagine a lot of people are more in the kind of affordable art price range. I know I am. That's what I would be looking for.
Me too.
So how do you find art that is affordable and that is of a decent quality? I guess that's another part of it is how do you know when a piece of art is good quality? I mean, because like you say, we're all online and it's easy to click a button. And I assume that we can go to like Amazon and find art, if I type in art or whatever. But I don't know how to know that what I'm getting is something good and affordable. But so how would you go about that?
That's a great question. If you want to advance the slide, I'll show you a couple things that I'm looking at. And so when I say budget collecting, I am thinking it's sort of a range of $500 to $5,000. But I just bought a piece for my collection that was $40. That's like the magic number tonight, Bethany. That I bought from Transformer, their flat files. So Transformer, for those of you not familiar, is a nonprofit arts organization here in the DC area that promotes work of our artists locally.
Mhm.
And I bought a very, very small piece by an artist that was interesting to me. She had an installation at the Krieger Museum and is known for textiles. But this is a small thing. It was $40. And I thought, great. So you have an opportunity if you see something, for example, locally, you might find something very small that's in a price point that's a little bit outside what the artist is known for in this case. You also might find, like these two works that are on the screen, they are both things that I discovered online. They're both from online art fairs. They both appeal to me because of the focus of my collection. Some of what I collect are, I have images of women with their dogs, which goes back to that first painting that I ever acquired, which is the 19th century painting of the woman with the dog at her feet standing by a fountain. And so part of my collection is kind of informed by that, to be honest. So these two pieces I found online and they both appeal to me. And sometimes it just comes down to, what do you like? I think quality is subjective, but if you are buying something directly from an artist, it is something that you love. It's from a gallery that has a good reputation. That's very different than buying something on eBay that you're not really sure what it is.
Mhm.
So I think the first rule of thumb would be look at the source where the artwork is coming from and make sure you're comfortable with that. And if you're comfortable with that, then chances are pretty good that you're getting something of quality. If you've met an artist or you have a conversation or you see something on Instagram and you kind of know who the people are, there's some real opportunity there.
So,
But
so the piece you said you found a piece for $40. Was that like an original, like a painting?
it is. It's a work on paper. It's a gouache and watercolor. A gouache is a kind of it's not exactly a paint, but it's in that family where it's for all intents and purposes a painting, but it's on paper rather than on canvas. And it's tiny, maybe 3 inches by 4 inches or something like that. So for people who have small spaces, for those people who are doing gallery walls, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to find really fun pieces of art, whether it's online, whether it's through an arts organization for a little bit of money. It might be through a consignment shop. You might find something that just appeals to you and you like it and it works. So, again, it's going back to that. You buy what you love, but you have to have some conversations. I also think it depends on how much risk you're taking with your budget. So that'll be something, again, while we're talking about budget, if you're spending a couple $100s, then, if you've made a mistake, and let me tell you, I've made a few in my time, it doesn't sting quite as bad. But if you're spending a lot of money, then you want to know that you're buying something that really is quality. And we'll get to a couple things as we continue the conversation where we talk about what's available at auction, for example. But if you move the slide one more, there's all of these places to have the conversations that we're talking about. So you have two ways, fundamentally two ways in essence, to buy art. You have the primary market, And that's your galleries directly from artists, things like that, where you're buying art for the first time. Then you have what we call the secondary market, which is the auction market, which is where I work. And that is something that has been pre-owned, for lack of a better word. So I use art fairs as a portal to finding galleries that have things in common with what I am emotionally drawn to. And that would be my first suggestion. You've got Frieze, which is terrific. It's online only now. Art Miami is one that I go to every year, and I hope to get back to it. And I found some really wonderful galleries from all over the world, and you can sign up for their email list and get on their programming and seeing what they have to offer. And then you have another site called Saatchi Art, which has a lot of, it's like a viewing room basically. And you have artist studios and you have some small galleries, and there's a lot of content on there. That is a place where you just need to figure out if you're buying a reproduction. And I'm not saying that that means it's fake. It means that an artist might be selling a painting for a few $1,000s, but because a lot of us are on budgets today, they are reproducing certain works from their body of work and offering those for a much lower price point. So if you like their work, you can buy something, that's a multiple or maybe from a small edition. So there's some really great opportunities buying both on the primary market, and then on the secondary market, you have auction houses have a lot of their own bidding platforms. Then you have places like Artsy, which is a place I really like to sort of browse and look, and you have like buttons on there. So it's a very familiar format. You have Live Auctioneers, Invaluable. Those are both bidding platforms that will give you access to auctions all over the place. And there is literally an auction every 5 minutes. So that's why I really say look and engage. And once you start looking, you'll start to kind of see more things that you like. But I think once you click a button and buy something, it'll be contagious, and you'll kind of get the bug and feel more comfortable.
I've even, you mentioned Basquiat earlier, and who can afford one of his works? He's sitting here right now. But you can Google like artists like Basquiat, and I think I actually found an Artsy article that featured 5 contemporary artists that sort of have a similar style. So you can get a style and an aesthetic you like, but also still get an original work of art.
I think that's really a terrific point, that when you get curious, when you like something, when you start to try to investigate why you like it, you might find that an artist that you love might be out of your price range, but there's other artists that were in their circle, and maybe they aren't as well known. There's a lot of artwork right now by female artists that's starting to appreciate, but there's a tremendous opportunity to buy works by women artists that may have worked alongside, male contemporaries, and they're not as well known. So that's a terrific point where, if you do start looking at things and kind of getting familiar with certain names and knowing what you like, the more you look, the more you'll see.
I guess I also just want to mention on the topic of art fairs, if we, when we can go back to those in person. I know there's big art fairs around the world like Miami Beach and Art Basel, and that sounds, maybe a little bit less accessible. But I know like a couple of years ago, I think there's an art fair that started here in DC, Superfine.
Yeah.
So that's very local and probably more accessible if you want to keep it affordable and not have to travel somewhere far off. So hopefully they'll be back when things open up again.
Yeah, but you do have, so in the center slide here, you have the online affordable art fair. And so that's something I encourage people. It's next month, and it is called Affordable for a reason. There are a lot of things being sold online that are in a reasonable price point, depending again on what you want to spend. Once you start looking and kind of seeing which art fair is your price range, Art Miami is probably in my price range, although it's often in the top end of my range. Most often Art Basel is out of my price range, but that's why I think with all this technology and so much content being online, now is the time to look. I can see what I like. And just like you were saying, Bethany, I can educate myself a little bit without feeling, embarrassed, frankly, that I can't afford to buy something at $150,000. I can still look at it. I can still see what it is I like about it,
Yeah.
and, see what it can teach me about what I might be able to afford.
Right, right.
Yeah, and I guess for years I was maybe hesitant to ask prices when I was in person, but a few years ago when I went to one of these art fairs, I think it was actually Art Basel, I started asking prices just to see what they would say, and I was surprised at how receptive they were to doing that. But at the same time, they were talking about like millions of dollars. It's like, yeah, I this.
Yeah.
But thanks.
It's a fascinating world, but I think galleries are in a place now where they're trying to find ways to engage new collectors, and technology has been really makes us able to do that. And there's some terrific opportunities. We can talk to people and engage with people, and galleries are more open. And I've met some wonderful people who knew that I wasn't going to buy something, but we just had fabulous conversations, because people are in the business because they want to share. Art is emotional. It's about sharing and connecting and creating community. And so it's not always about price point, but price has to inform, our decision. So if we move on to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about price and why it matters, and what we're looking at. So I don't want to spend too much time on this slide. Just going back to quality and how this slide is supposed to be confusing because it's difficult for new collectors sometimes to figure out what it is they're buying. Prints and multiples is something that I collect. I find it's a really great price point. It's a really great buying opportunity, both for new collectors and seasoned collectors. But when you're new, what is a giclée? A lot of people go, oh, I have this original giclée. It's a computer printing process, and it's not really an original. And so being familiar with the types of, printing, etchings, screen prints, what does it mean? What are you buying? Is it original? What's original about it? Typically in the auction business, we use the word original when we are talking about a painting, or we are talking about something where the artist's hand is on it. So occasionally you will see prints that have some handwork. It might be, I've seen a lot of younger artists working in this medium where they'll take a print and then they'll almost color it in. I know it sounds not so stimulating, but using digital printing and new technology, they're kind of creating a body of work using interesting new technologies. So again, without spending too much time here, you start to understand quality when you understand what it is you're buying. And when you understand a little bit more about what the process is, that is helpful to know how much you should spend on it. So if you're looking for something that's affordable and it's just a hand-colored lithograph, then that's going to be affordable. If somebody's charging a lot of money for something like that, then that should be a little bit of a red flag to maybe ask a couple questions. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're not buying something worth it, but there may be questions there that should be asked of a collector.
So I guess I know auctions are kind of more your wheelhouse. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more and go into how auctions fit into how the art world has evolved today? And
Sure. If you move to the next slide, that'll be a great segue. So auctions have always, at least for the last 10 or 15 years, we're adopters of new technology by necessity. We used digital cameras. We knew that we could reach a broad audience with online auctions. auctions became global a number of years ago, and you saw prices start to skyrocket. So with COVID, we have seen this kind of the hybrid that we were of both online and in person has now moved exclusively online. Slowly, some auction houses are getting back to in-person viewings, which is terrific. But what you see on this slide is basically what you would see if you went to one of the bidding platforms to buy something at auction. This is a print by the artist Victor Vasarely. Prolific, really fun. I wouldn't mind owning something by him, and they're, you know, bright and easy. So when you read this, there's a lot of different things going on the screen. You have the lot number, you have the title, the year, and then it says screen print in colors on wove paper. So when we're talking about prints, we have things like wove paper, which is a high quality printing paper. You might see other kinds of brand names for printing paper that was used by different artists working in this general time period. And that's a really good clue that you're buying something authentic and that you're buying something high quality. Then you've got the dimensions. So we've got a really good size, roughly 30 by 24. So that's terrific. I highly suggest anybody who doesn't have a tape measure, go get one. You know, I carry one with me, and I am oftentimes, you know, when I'm looking at something, or I'm always looking at art, I could be standing in line somewhere, and, you know, you might want to know, like, what does that really look like? Auction houses, typically the dimensions do not include the frame. An auction house is not selling you a guarantee of the frame. It is only selling you the artwork. So if we look again at the description, you see something underneath where it says starting bid. It says buyer's premium. So that is what collectors who are not familiar with buying at auction need to understand, that auction houses will charge you 25 to 30% on top of the final bid. Then you're paying tax and shipping in some cases. So it's really important, if you're considering buying at auction, to understand what fees are charged on top of what you are thinking you're buying something for, because it can get quite expensive. In this case, you've got an estimated value at $2,000 to $2,500. The auction houses have kind of taken the guesswork out of it for you. An auction house bases an estimate on what similar things have sold for in the past. So you've got that range depending on how much competition there is. And that's a really great guideline. Things do go over, you know, obviously when there's a lot of competitive bidding, you can find that things can double their estimate. But it helps me to understand, where am I going to stop bidding? So that's one tip that I have for those of you who are not familiar with buying at auction. Always think about where you want to stop, because I'm competitive. I don't know about you. And then I get caught up in the moment.
Yeah.
You're thinking, oh my God, I don't want to lose this. But really, at the end of the day, if you're spending $2,500, and that's the hammer price, as we call it, your final bid maybe, then you've got tax, you've got the buyer's premium, which is close to 30%. So that can, you know, nudge you over $3,000. And then you've got shipping. So, you know, if you're going to spend that kind of money, is this what you would have bought? And those are the things you need to think about buying online. This particular piece, by the way, sold yesterday. It brought $2,400. That includes the buyer's premium. So it sold a little closer to the low estimate. But that's the great thing about buying online, is you can click a button and you can leave a bid there. And if you get outbid, you can say, okay, next one. It was one of 7 Vasarely prints in that particular auction. So, you know, it's not something that's uncommon. It comes up, you know, his work comes up with some frequency. And, you know, that's the great thing, is there's always something to buy. But the difference with buying at auction versus buying from a gallery, for example, is you can have those extra fees. And if you're not careful, that buyer's premium, as you spend more money, turns into a large expense. Where when you buy at a gallery, it is a fixed price. On an occasion, you can negotiate and sometimes get a little bit of a discount. Or if you're buying directly from an artist, of course, it is a fixed price and you're having a conversation directly with that person.
But in those other instances, that still doesn't include shipping and framing and all that stuff, right?
Sometimes it does include framing. So in that first, not the first slide, but the slide with all of the different ways you could buy art fairs, Saatchi, for example, includes some pieces where they are framed. And so for, $250, if you find something you like, it'll say framed. It will not include shipping. So that's another benefit of buying locally, and going to an artist studio and seeing what's going on. Or we have a couple of terrific galleries here in Washington. Hemphill is one of them. There's a couple pieces that have come through. I've seen emails that are in the $3,500 price range that were interesting to me and a little bit tempting. So one of the things to think about is that's kind of a $2,500 piece at auction. When you figure in the fees, the tax, the shipping, then maybe that $3,500 thing from a gallery might be a stretch. They also might let you pay for it over, 2 months. So there are some buying opportunities and different things to think about depending on where you're comfortable. Again, one is the secondary market and might be artists that we're familiar with name-wise, like Miro and Picasso and Calder. So those are opportunities that you would find online through an auction. Obviously, you can buy them through a secondary market dealer as well. But, when you're buying through a gallery, you're buying emerging artists or you're buying directly from an artist, and that's a terrific opportunity. And there's a lot of fun in that sector.
So I guess I'm looking at the slide that you have up there, and that piece, it looks nice, but I guess I would have to use the tape measure to really understand if it fits in my space. But even with that, I can see it may be a little bit difficult to really kind of imagine it. I mean, I don't really see the outlines of the paper, so I don't know what it will look like framed or anything. So let's say I end up buying this. How can I return it if it doesn't work? If I don't like it, I mean, what then?
Sadly, you cannot. So this particular site, Artsy, has you'll see underneath the piece, it says view in room, and in the middle there. And it has a feature where you can look at what it looks like on your wall, which is a terrific tool.
Wow.
Basically, when you are buying something like this, it is not returnable. Those are the conditions of sale. You are buying it as is. You are assuming title. Once the hammer falls, it becomes yours and you are obligated to pay for it. The only thing that you have in terms of return opportunities at auction is if something has been miscatalogued. And that is the great thing about buying at auction. You have a number of years because things are guaranteed. Unlike buying in different venues, or, if you find something you just got to have on eBay, or you buy something from a consignment shop. When you buy at auction, if it is not as it was cataloged to be, you can get your money back because there is a guarantee. And that's part of the conditions of sale. One thing I would stress too, you just made me think of it, Michael, is a condition report. So knowing what condition something is in, like this is in particularly good condition, but the next slide, if you want to move to that, there are some condition notes that we'll talk about. So if, for example, you bought this and you thought, it was miscatalogued and it wasn't signed and numbered or something, but the auction house said it was, then you would have recourse to return it. But Calder is a terrific artist, I think familiar to so many people. We have wonderful pieces in the National Gallery of Art by Calder, and an artist I've always really loved. So this is a piece that came up at auction at Doyle not too long ago. And you'll see that the signature, I kind of blew it up when I put the slide together. So it is signed and it is from a numbered edition. But the condition, I'm going to read here what the condition notes are from our expert. It says light stain mixed with 3 small pieces of linen tape verso to top matte, matte stain, and offsetting verso. So you kind of need a little translator there. And what is that? Light stain. So light stain is something that happens when things have been exposed to light. So that gives you a little bit of caution that it's not in pristine condition.
I
So
thought
the
it was, I meant it wasn't a heavy stain.
Exactly, because prints can be hard to clean. Matte stain is what happens over time when things are matted, when they're framed. It's basically a burn or pollution left behind from the mat, and it's underneath when you take the mat off. Framing techniques are much different today. So without spending too much time here, condition is really important in understanding condition reports, and those all kind of tie into how you picture something. You do have to use a little imagination. It does take some experience and some practice. I bought something not too long ago where I was kind of loosey-goosey about it, and I forgot to pay attention to the condition report. And it's a print, and it's on really heavy paper. So it's all scrunched up in the bottom corner. And when I got it, I was sort of like, oh, what's that? So I thought I was getting a bargain. The condition's not great. I spent almost $600 having it framed, and I do have a little buyer's remorse. I mean, to be honest, had I paid attention to the condition report, I don't think I would have bought it. I still enjoy it, but I might be selling it sooner than I thought.
So even if you look at the condition report, you still have questions. Is there any way of getting those answered? Can you call anyone?
Yes, there's always a specialist at an auction house who would be willing to answer questions for you. And, sometimes the great thing about auctions is we love new bidders. And so when somebody says to me, I'm not familiar with buying at auction, what do these terms mean? Can you help me a little bit? We are happy to explain things.
That's great.
Send an email, pick up the phone, make a phone call. And I know, again, buying at galleries, people are really excited to share information too. But never be afraid to ask questions. I think that's the bottom line. And if you're not comfortable, don't buy it.
Yeah. That's a good point. I know people probably still feel intimidated to talk to artists in galleries, but what kinds of questions do you ask? Like about, just when you're getting to know a gallery or when you're getting to know an artist, what types of questions do you ask?
Sometimes, it depends on whether I'm drawn into a specific work of art. So a conversation I had with a gallery when I was in Art Miami last year, there was a painting, a woman with her dog, go figure.
There's a theme here.
Particularly drawn to it because it reminded me of an artist. And so I stopped and I chit-chatted. And so it turned out in conversation, the artist who had painted it was French and was also particularly drawn to the works that I was reminded of. So there can be just something simple, sometimes you might ask, where's the artist from? Or you might be buying because, there's something that you can't really put your finger on that's appealing. So I have a number of different things that I collect. I don't just collect one thing, and I don't just collect things that go on my wall. I have some sculpture, I have ceramics, I've got prints and multiples, I've got photographs, I've got paintings, I've got tchotchkes, I've got, that's a technical term, by the way. So, you might be drawn to something and the conversation centers around what you're drawn to. So it can be hard here for us to kind of speak about it, but sometimes it's just getting to know an artist a little bit better, or talking to a gallery about how long have they represented an artist, or, just really basic questions. I think one tip that I have is many people are probably overthinking. Many people probably think that there's a discourse or some special dialogue or some handshake that we have to have. It's really, really basic. And it can just be like, I really like this. What can you tell me about it?
Yeah.
And so that is why I find collecting in the virtual world can be really exciting, although I do miss some of the in-person conversations because that emotional part of collecting is really, really important. So I think as we start to get back to some of that, use the time that we have now to hone your eye a little bit, to see what it is you like, to see what kind of price range you might be comfortable with.
Mhm.
And then, pick up the ball and run with it. See where you want to buy at auction. There's so many reputable auctions. Some auctions specialize in different things. Some houses are more general. And so, if anybody has some questions about those specifics, maybe we can take that offline, or they can email or use the chat feature or something like that. But I think for me, the tip that I have is it's a simple start. It's just, hey, how are you? Tell me about your gallery. Tell me about this piece. And they'll talk to you. Do you collect photography, or do you collect blah? And conversation happens naturally. At least for me, I find that most conversation with galleries, with wherever we are, that can happen naturally, and galleries just want to share with you.
So I think you had a slide with a piece that you bought that didn't quite turn out the way you were expecting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's next? Okay.
As we start to get to the end of the presentation, these are my tips for all of you out there. And really, it comes down to just get curious, have fun, engage in conversation. There's no real, there can be some wrong, but for the most part, there's no wrong. You figure out what you like, and just start to set some guidelines for yourself. Do not go looking for bargains. Don't do what I did and buy an inexpensive thing and have all these added costs. I thought I was getting a good deal, and buy the best that you can afford. And that's a consistent tip that everyone will tell you when you talk about collecting. Buy what you love, buy the best you can afford that catches your eye, and learn from other people. Definitely check the size of what it is you're buying. Get the condition report, and consider the additional costs. So this is a piece on the slide from my collection that I bought at auction. I bought it at an online only opportunity. I did not see it in person. It is a Beijing based artist who's really a pioneer of video art. So I was excited to find it. And I actually kind of, I think I got a good deal on it. The only but here is that when I did get it home and I put it where I wanted to hang it, it had a weird glare, and everything reflects funny off the surface. I think it's because it's framed with a particular type of glass. It just doesn't show well. So I need to figure out a way to light it. It really looks like this, but in person, you can't see the detail of the chandelier. You can't see the detail of the architecture that's crumbling behind it. And those are all elements that speak to what the artist is known for. And so it's a work in progress. I still really love it, but I got to figure out how to light it or where to put it so that I can enjoy it.
But matching with your existing decor shouldn't be a concern, right? Buy it if you love it. If it goes with your couch, or not.
Besides that, I think that color or your decor can inform a decision. I work with a lot of interior designers who would absolutely say, yes, buy what works with your decor. Certainly you have to buy what works with your space. You have to, think about things like color and lighting. Always buy what you love is your first tip. But if you're choosing between a couple different things and you happen to think that the colors of one go better, why not? I like to set some parameters about what it is I want to collect, because otherwise it's overwhelming. It's really, really challenging to figure out where to start. And you just have to just take one step forward. Don't overcomplicate things. And if you want to buy because you like a particular color, then, have fun with it.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Cool.
So, and I guess we have one more slide just to talk about in closing.
Mm.
I wanted to mention this for all of the collectors out there who need some inspiration. And this is a piece from the Vogel collection. There is a movie that's available on Amazon, I believe, a PBS documentary about Herbert and Dorothy Vogel.
Mhm.
And they were a couple, and he worked at the post office. She was a librarian. So we were talking about not people of means. They collected 4,000 works of art in about 45 years. I mean, it's extraordinary. Every free moment they had was art collecting. Every free bit of money was going towards art.
Yeah.
So maybe that's not the approach that most of us are going to take, but they bought what they could afford, and they bought the best that they could afford, and they had conversations with artists. And so you just never know what's going to happen when you start talking to people and getting out there and engaging yourself. They have donated their collection to the National Gallery of Art here in Washington, D.C.
Mhm.
There are some extraordinary works of art. And, you know, these are basically regular, everyday collectors that were passionate, hopefully like the rest of us.
Yeah.
So I think my sort of tip here is, you know, let passion be a motivator, and don't think about, you know, some other things, and the rest of it will fall into place.
Yeah, I read that they had a 1-bedroom apartment in New York, and just art was stuffed under their beds, in their closets, in their bathroom.
My colleague at Doyle has a saying, and it always makes me laugh. And he says all the time, and I'm like, "Do you need some?" You know, he's like, "It's not hoarding if your stuff is cool."
Right.
And so what it is it speaks to that emotional aspect. Malcolm Gladwell has a really interesting podcast, and I wish I could remember, where he was talking about collecting and what was in the Louvre, and you know that these pieces are in the basement and they don't see the light of day. And there is a emotional component, and for those of us who love collecting, it's an emotional journey. It is the journey, it is not the destination. And so there's real joy in it, but we are driven in a different way. So you can collect for fun, you can collect to decorate. And like the Vogels, you can collect like in a whole different level.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, so the video, the movie here, we'll post a link to that on the website, as well as also the resources and tips that you mentioned. We'll post all that stuff at factorysociety.org. So how can people reach you if they want to talk to you?
So let's move to the next slide. I think we've got all our contact information up there.
Okay.
If there's any questions, we'll take a minute or two, use that hand raise or chat feature, or if you'd rather take the conversation offline, I would love to hear from you. I would love to get, you know, any feedback. I would love if you're, you know, have further questions and you just feel like you've run out of time and you've got to get back to life. Please, I invite you to email me. I'd love to hear about artists that are interesting to you, and let's keep the conversation going.
Thank you very much for being here tonight. This was awesome.
It was really fun. So thanks. It was great conversation, and I'll look forward to another chance to talk about art. It's my favorite subject. So thanks for inviting me, and thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that, you know, again, thank you, Samira, and again, thank you, Michael, and everybody.
Sure.
And
So thanks everybody for attending.
thanks. Bye-bye. Good night.
All right. See ya.
Good night.